manipulation, or loss of free will. But what if we flip the meaning? What if brainwashing wasn't about being controlled by others, but about choosing to direct your own thoughts deliberately? In reality, every day we are being influenced by media, by culture, by people around us. If you don't take ownership of what enters your mind, someone else will. From the moment you wake up, stories start shaping your day. The headline you read, the comment someone makes, the tone of a conversation, it all builds a narrative inside your head. Most of the time, you don't even realize it's happening. The mind absorbs messages like a sponge. If those messages aren't carefully selected, they begin to form beliefs that don't serve you. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough, or success is for other people. To redefine brainwashing, we start by asking, whose voice am I listening to? Because if you're living by someone else's script, you've already been brainwashed, just not intentionally. The key is to shift from passive consumption to active creation. Instead of being the audience to your own life, you become the author. You decide what thoughts get to stay and which ones you refuse to entertain. Consider this: every belief you hold was once just a suggestion. Someone suggested you were smart and you believed it. Someone suggested you weren't capable, and maybe you believe that too. Brainwashing yourself for success means putting new, empowering suggestions in front of yourself until they become the default. It's not fake, it's training. Just like the body can be conditioned through exercise, the mind can be conditioned through repeated thought. Think about athletes who convince themselves they're the best long before the world sees it. They aren't delusional, they're disciplined in their self-conditioning. They brainwash themselves into a state where success feels natural, even inevitable. They've chosen which story to replay in their minds over and over again. It's not luck, it's intentional repetition of belief. Most of us already repeat stories in our heads, but too often they're the wrong ones. I always mess up. I can never get ahead. This is just the way things are. These aren't facts, they're scripts, and they can be rewritten. The first step to brainwashing yourself for success is noticing the loop you're stuck in. Because once you can see it, you can replace it. Reprogramming doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing a lens that moves you forward instead of holding you back. If you face a setback, you can call it failure or you can call it feedback. If you face rejection, you can call it proof you're not good enough, or you can call it practice for the time you succeed. The brain doesn't know the difference until you teach it. And this is where the real work begins. Brainwashing yourself for success is not about forcing positivity. It's about deliberately installing beliefs that align with where you want to go. Every time you repeat a powerful thought, every time you expose yourself to an empowering idea, you are programming your own mind. It's not magic, it's mental discipline. Every human being lives inside a story. The problem is most of us don't even realize we're the authors. The narrative in our head, how we describe who we are, what we're capable of, and what's possible for us, shapes everything we do. If the story is full of self-doubt, no strategy, no opportunity, no amount of hard work will fully matter. The narrative will always pull us back to match the script we've accepted. Self-doubt is one of the most persistent characters in that script. It whispers, you're not ready, you're not qualified, you don't belong here. And over time, those whispers become truth in your mind. But the truth is not in the doubt. The truth is in the story you choose to replace it with. If you continue to replay a disempowering narrative, you'll keep living the same results. If you rewrite it with empowering stories, you create a different future. Controlling the narrative starts with awareness. Notice the words you use when you describe yourself, your past, and your goals. Do you say, I'm terrible at this? Or do you say, I'm still learning this skill? The difference may seem small, but the brain listens carefully. Language isn't just communication, it's construction. Each sentence builds a wall or a bridge inside your mind. Every great achievement in history began with someone telling themselves a different story. Innovators believed they could solve problems others had accepted as impossible. Leaders believed they could inspire change when others had settled for the status quo. They didn't have guarantees, but they had a narrative that pulled them forward instead of holding them back. The story you choose to believe doesn't just describe reality, it creates it. Daily repetition is where the shift happens. The brain doesn't rewire itself after one pep talk. It needs consistent reminders, consistent storytelling. That's why affirmations, journaling, or even speaking your goals out loud can be so powerful. You're not tricking yourself, you're training yourself. You're rehearsing a story until your mind accepts it as natural, just like you once rehearsed doubt until it became automatic. Think about the stories you tell yourself in moments of challenge. Do you say, this always happens to me? Or do you say, this is my chance to prove I can adapt? One story keeps you trapped in the role of the victim. The other casts you as the hero of your journey. The facts may be the same, but the interpretation shifts everything. Control the story, and you control your state of mind. Even your past is not fixed. It's filtered through the story you attach to it. A painful experience can either be evidence that I'm not good enough or proof that I'm resilient enough to survive. You can't change what happened, but you can control how you narrate it. And that narration determines whether your past becomes an anchor or a foundation. When you wake up every day, you have a choice to let self doubt-write the script or pick up the pen yourself. The world will offer you countless reasons to question your ability, but you get to decide which story plays on repeat in your head, and the story you repeat becomes the reality you live. Your mind is like fertile soil. It doesn't choose what grows, it simply grows whatever seeds are planted. Every word you hear, every image you see, every piece of information you consume is a seed. Over time, those seeds take root and shape your beliefs, your emotions, and your actions. If you don't filter what goes in, you can't be surprised by what comes out. Most people underestimate just how powerful their daily inputs are. Spend enough time around negativity, and you start to echo it. Watch endless stories of failure, chaos, or fear, and your brain begins to believe the world is only that. Listen to voices that tell you it can't be done, and soon you'll stop trying. The input is subtle, but the effect is dramatic. It builds the environment of your thoughts. Guarding your mind doesn't mean isolating yourself from reality. It means becoming intentional about what deserves your attention. Not every headline is worth reading. Not every conversation is worth joining. Not every opinion is worth accepting. Just as you wouldn't let anyone dump trash into your living room, why would you allow mental clutter to take up space in your head? Think about the difference between people who are energized and people who are drained. Often, it's not just their circumstances, it's what they've been feeding on. One person spends hours absorbing content that inspires and challenges them. Another spends hours scrolling through complaints and controversies. Same 24 hours, completely different mental fuel. And over time, that fuel determines momentum. Filtering your inputs also applies to the people you keep close. Energy is contagious, and so are beliefs. If the voices around you constantly predict failure, you'll start to lower your expectations. If they normalize mediocrity, you'll stop striving for excellence. Surround yourself with people whose mindset pushes you upward, and your own thinking begins to rise without force. It's not just about cutting out the negative, it's about amplifying the positive. Fill your mind with books that stretch your perspective, podcasts that encourage growth, conversations that spark new ideas. Even a few minutes a day of intentional input can outweigh hours of passive consumption. The goal is not to avoid all noise, it's to tune into the frequencies that strengthen your vision. And here's the truth. You can't always control the first thought that enters your mind, but you can control how long it stays. You can decide whether to replay it, feed it, and let it grow, or to replace it with something better. Filtering your inputs is not about perfection, it's about discipline. Catching yourself before the wrong seeds have time to sprout. What you watch, read, and listen to is not entertainment alone, it's training. Every input is a silent lesson shaping your expectations of life. When you start filtering with intention, you stop living by accident. You stop letting random noise become your inner voice, and instead, you choose the inputs that align with the future you want to create. Success is not built on occasional bursts of motivation. It's built on what you do repeatedly without thinking. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to grand declarations. It responds to patterns. Small repeated actions are what tell your brain, this is who I am now. Over time, those actions become automatic, and once they're automatic, they define your identity. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every morning debating whether you should do it. It's simply a ritual ingrained through years of repetition. Now imagine applying that same automatic consistency to actions that build success, writing each day, practicing a skill, reviewing your goals, feeding your mind with positive inputs. The power isn't in doing it once with intensity, it's in doing it daily with intention. Big intentions often create excitement, but fade quickly because the brain doesn't change from one-time effort. It changes when it's shown the same behavior again and again until resistance disappears. That's why New Year's resolutions rarely last. Motivation runs out before repetition has time to rewire the subconscious. Success isn't about making one big decision. It's about remaking the same small decision until it no longer feels like a choice. Repetition is how the brain learns to accept something as truth. When you repeat a thought, I'm capable, I'm disciplined, I'm worthy, the mind begins to believe it. When you repeat an action, showing up early, practicing focus, keeping promises to yourself, the mind begins to expect it. Eventually, the repetition becomes stronger than doubt, stronger than excuses, stronger than fear. Rituals make repetition sustainable. A ritual is not just a task, it's a system that removes friction. For example, if you want to exercise daily, laying out your clothes the night before turns an intention into an automatic trigger. If you want to write daily, setting a time and place conditions your brain to enter the state without hesitation. Rituals transform effort into flow because they connect action to rhythm. The beauty of small, repeated actions is that they compound. One push-up doesn't change your body, but hundreds over time transform you. One page doesn't make a book, but 1,000 pages written in small, consistent doses create an entire story. The subconscious doesn't care about the size of the action, only the frequency. What you do often is what you become. Rituals of repetition also anchor discipline. When motivation fades, no one feels inspired every day, but rituals don't rely on inspiration. They run on habit, and habit doesn't ask how you feel, it just activates. That's why the most successful people are often not the most talented, but the most consistent. They've built systems that carry them forward even when emotion wants to pull them back. If you want to change your life, don't focus on what you'll do once in a while. Focus on what you'll do every single day. One small ritual, repeated until it's second nature, can have more impact than the biggest dream never acted upon. Your subconscious is listening closely, and the language it understands best is repetition. The human brain is deeply influenced by its surroundings, often more than we realize. Environment is not neutral. It either supports growth or reinforces limitation. If you want to rewire your mind for success, you can't just rely on willpower. You need to surround yourself with signals that constantly remind you of who you are becoming. These signals act as silent reinforcements, nudging your thoughts and behaviors in the right direction without force. People are the most powerful success signals you'll ever encounter. Spend time with individuals who think bigger, push harder, and expect more of themselves, and you'll naturally begin to elevate your own standards. On the other hand, spend time with people who complain, settle, or ridicule ambition, and you'll slowly absorb their mindset as normal. Who you allow into your circle shapes what you believe is possible. Your physical environment carries just as much weight. A cluttered, uninspiring space sends the subconscious message that you don't take your goals seriously. A clean, organized, and intentional environment tells your brain that focus and growth matter. Even small details like the books on your shelf, the quotes on your wall, or the music playing in the background send signals that shape your state of mind. Cues matter because the subconscious mind responds to triggers. When you place a notebook by your bedside, it cues you to capture ideas before they vanish. When you set your running shoes near the door, it cues you to follow through on exercise. Success signals are not about making giant leaps. They're about creating subtle nudges that guide your behavior toward consistency. Technology can either amplify or dilute your success signals. If your phone is filled with distractions, endless scrolling, and negative noise, it becomes a signal of avoidance. If it's filled with reminders, inspiring voices, and tools that push you to act, it becomes a signal of focus. The devices we check dozens of times a day are either quietly undermining us or quietly strengthening us. Even the language you allow around you becomes a signal. Words create atmosphere. If the conversations you engage in are filled with limitation, gossip, or cynicism, those words seep into your mindset. If the conversations highlight opportunities, solutions, and possibilities, they shape a mental environment that fosters growth. Every word absorbed is either fuel or friction. Success signals also work through rituals shared with others. A group that meets regularly to discuss goals creates accountability. A mentor who checks in creates reinforcement. A community that celebrates progress sends a constant reminder that growth is normal and achievement is expected. These social signals are powerful because they don't just affect your behavior. They reset your identity through belonging. When you consciously choose your people, your environments, and your cues, you remove much of the mental resistance to success. Instead of battling against surroundings that pull you backward, you align with surroundings that push you forward. Over time, the signals around you create an atmosphere so strong that success stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like the natural outcome. Most people chase success as if it's something outside of them, a prize to be won or a destination to reach. But the truth is, lasting success doesn't come from chasing. It comes from aligning who you are with what you want. When success becomes part of your identity, you no longer have to force it. You act in accordance with who you believe yourself to be, and the results naturally follow. Identity is the strongest driver of human behavior. You can want to quit smoking, but if you still see yourself as a smoker trying to quit, you'll constantly fight temptation. The shift happens when you see yourself as a non-smoker, someone for whom smoking simply doesn't fit. The same is true with success. If you keep telling yourself, I'm trying to be successful, you'll always feel like it's in the future. But if you tell yourself, I am the kind of person who creates success, your actions start to reflect that belief immediately. Anchoring success to identity means focusing less on outcomes and more on who you're becoming. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you say, I am a runner. Instead of saying, I want to write a book, you say, I am a writer. The identity is what locks in the habit. The results are simply the evidence of the identity you've chosen. This shift is powerful because the human mind craves consistency with its identity. If you see yourself as disciplined, you'll resist actions that contradict discipline. If you see yourself as resilient, you'll keep moving even when circumstances get tough. Success anchored to identity no longer feels like something you have to chase. It feels like something you have to live up to. Anchoring identity also eliminates the trap of external validation. When success is about titles, money, or recognition, you're vulnerable to setbacks and criticism. But when success is about being the kind of person who shows up, who grows, who perseveres, no external opinion can take that away. Your success isn't fragile because it isn't borrowed, it's built into who you are. Identity-based success also makes consistency easier. Motivation fluctuates, willpower runs out, but identity remains stable. If you're tired, you may not feel like exercising, but if you see yourself as an athlete, you do it anyway. If you're busy, you may not feel like working on your craft, but if you see yourself as a creator, you find a way. The behavior flows from the identity, not from fleeting emotion. Anchoring success to identity doesn't mean ignoring growth. It means expanding what your identity can hold. Every time you achieve something new, you integrate it into your sense of self. You go from someone who ran a race to someone who runs, from someone who gave a speech to someone who speaks. Each action reinforces the deeper story of who you are becoming. When success becomes part of your identity, effort shifts from something you push to something you embody. You stop asking, how do I force myself to succeed? And start asking, what does someone like me naturally do? That question changes everything, because success stops being an occasional outcome and becomes the default expression of who you are. The mind doesn't know the difference between vivid imagination and real experience. This is why athletes, performers, and leaders use visualization as a tool to prepare for success before it happens. When you rehearse the future in your mind, you train your brain to accept achievement as familiar rather than foreign. The more familiar it feels, the less resistance you face when it arrives. Visualization is more than just daydreaming. It's a deliberate practice of creating mental images of what you want to achieve and experiencing them with detail. You don't just picture the result, you picture the process. You see yourself walking into the room with confidence, delivering the presentation with clarity, crossing the finish line with strength. Each mental rehearsal sends the signal to your brain, this is who I am. This is what I do. Emotional rehearsal takes this even deeper. It's not enough to see the future, you have to feel it. When you allow yourself to feel the pride, the joy, the relief, the confidence of already achieving your goal, your brain encodes that emotion as reality. The subconscious then begins working to align your actions with that emotional memory. You're not just imagining success, you're practicing the state of being successful. Think about the opposite. If you constantly rehearse failure in your mind, imagining rejection, embarrassment, or defeat, your brain prepares you for those outcomes instead. That's why worry is just negative visualization. It's a rehearsal of the wrong future. The question is not whether you're rehearsing, but what you're rehearsing. The power of rehearsal is that it lowers fear. Fear often comes from facing the unknown, but when you've rehearsed an outcome repeatedly in your mind, it no longer feels unknown, it feels expected. The brain interprets it as something it has already done, and therefore the anxiety decreases. This is why pilots, surgeons, and athletes practice visualization. It creates calm in high-pressure situations. Rehearsing the future also strengthens focus. When you know what success looks and feels like, your brain becomes more alert to opportunities that align with that vision. You begin noticing resources, people, and solutions you might have overlooked before. The future you've rehearsed becomes a magnet, pulling your awareness toward anything that helps make it real. This practice works best when combined with action. Visualization without effort becomes fantasy, but visualization paired with consistent steps becomes acceleration. You're building a bridge between imagination and execution. The rehearsal gives you the mental blueprint, and your actions bring the blueprint into form. Every time you rehearse the future, you're telling your brain, this is not a wish, this is my reality in progress. Over time, the line between imagination and achievement blurs. What once felt distant starts to feel inevitable, and your behavior naturally adjusts to match the expectation you've rehearsed. Success is often thought of as a finish line, a moment in time when you finally arrive. But true success isn't only about reaching the goal. It's about the alignment between your thoughts and your actions along the way. When your mindset and your behavior move in the same direction, you create momentum. And momentum is what makes goals inevitable. Alignment is success in progress. Too many people set goals while carrying beliefs that contradict them. They say they want financial freedom but think money is hard to come by. They say they want health but believe I've always been unhealthy. These inner conflicts slow progress because the actions are not fully supported by the thoughts behind them. Alignment means your thoughts, beliefs, and actions all tell the same story, and when they do, movement feels natural instead of forced. Measuring alignment requires awareness. Instead of only asking, did I achieve the goal? Ask, are my daily actions consistent with the person I want to become? If the goal is to write a book, alignment is sitting down to write every morning. If the goal is to be fit, alignment is choosing nourishing foods and regular exercise. These daily choices are evidence that your inner commitment matches your outward behavior. Celebrating alignment is just as important as recognizing it. Too often we only celebrate the end result, which makes the journey feel empty until the big moment arrives. But when you celebrate alignment, when you notice yourself keeping promises, acting consistently, and staying true to your vision, you build motivation that compounds over time. The brain thrives on reward, and each celebration reinforces the behavior you want to repeat. Alignment also makes discipline easier. When your actions are forced, you constantly fight resistance. But when your thoughts and actions are aligned, discipline feels less like sacrifice and more like self-expression. You're not trying to be someone you're not. You're simply living out the identity you've already accepted. Alignment removes friction because there's no internal battle. Measuring alignment doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. Some days you'll drift, and that's natural. What matters is noticing when your actions slip out of alignment and bringing them back quickly. This reflection builds self-awareness, and self-awareness is what allows course correction before small missteps turn into detours. Celebrating alignment also protects against burnout. When you only reward the finish line, you miss the victories along the way. But when you acknowledge the small moments of integrity, when your actions match your intentions, you create energy and gratitude in the process. Success then stops being a distant destination and becomes a lived experience every single day. When you measure and celebrate alignment, you shift from chasing success to embodying it. You stop waiting for some future achievement to validate you and start finding proof of progress in the present. Each aligned thought, each aligned action becomes a step where success is already unfolding.